All right, let's talk about percents. So when we talk about a percent, it's so important, so important that you know that the word percent means out of 100. If you can remember that little fact right there, you will be set whenever we move on to something called percent proportions. So percent means out of 100. What we are going to look at today is we're going to look at how we convert from decimals to percents, from percents to decimals, and from a percent to a fraction. Now, of course, I've got some Smith Super Secret Math Hacks for you guys for decimals to percents. So when I move from a decimal to percent, I've put in bold some specific letters here. So in decimal, I bolded the L, and in percent, I bolded the R, because that helps me remember that I am going to be moving from the left to the right. So what I mean by moving the left to the right is I'm going to take the decimal and I'm going to move it to the right. And every single time when I go from a decimal to a percent, I'm going to move it to the right 2 spaces. So if I have the decimal and 64 hundredths, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Sorry for the pterodactyl. 64 hundredths, I'm going to take the decimal. I'm going to move it 2 spaces to the right. So 64 hundredths becomes 64%. I have and 125 thousandths. I'm going to take the decimal, move it 2 places to the right. So I get 12.5%. 9/10, take that decimal, move it 2 spaces to the right. I'm going to put a 0 in the blank space, so it becomes 90%. So that's all we're doing is that decimal gets moved 2 spaces to the right. We add a percent sign behind it, and we have converted. So let's keep going. So 5 3/10, move it 2 spaces to the right. Add a 0 would become 530%. 23 hundredths, move it 2 places to the right, so it becomes 23%. 75 hundredths, move it 2 places to the right, so it becomes 75%. 12 4/10, move it 2 places to the right, add a 0 in that blank space, so it becomes 1,240%. 1 3/10, move it 2 places to the right, add a 0, 130%. And our last one, 4/10, move it 2 places to the right, add a 0, and it becomes 40%. So again, for a decimal to a percent, left to right, 2 spaces. So then if I'm going to go from a percent to a decimal, this time it means I'm going from the right to the left, but it's still only 2 spaces. Now, it's important to remember that every whole number has that invisible decimal at the end. So let's write that down on our notes so we don't forget. Okay, so if I look at 67%, I'm going to move that decimal from the right to the left 2 spaces. So 67 is a whole number, so that decimal goes at the end. Move it to the left 2 spaces, 1, 2. And I'm going to drop the percent sign so it becomes and 67 hundredths. 425%, again, that's a whole number, so I'm going to put that decimal at the end. Move it 2 spaces to the left, so it becomes 4 25 hundredths when I drop that percent sign. 8% is also a whole number, so I'm going to take that decimal and put it at the end. Move it 2 spaces to the left, put a 0 in that blank spot, drop the percent sign so it becomes and 8 hundredths. 7 3/10%, it's already got a decimal there, so I don't need to add anything. I just need to move it 2 spaces to the left. So 1, 2, add a 0, so it becomes and 73 thousandths. 21%, we're going to add our decimal at the end because it's a whole number. Move it 2 spaces to the left, so it becomes and 21 hundredths. And 45 hundredths%, I've already got a decimal there. I need to move it 2 spaces to the left. So 1, 2, add a 0 in that blank space, so it becomes 0.0045. 231% is a whole number, so a decimal at the end. Move it 2 spaces to the left, so it becomes 2 and 31/100ths. 9/100ths of a percent. It's already got a decimal there. Move it 2 spaces to the left. Zeros to fill in those blank spaces, so it becomes 0.0009. And our last one, 13%, it's a whole number, so I add my decimal at the end, move it 2 spaces to the left, and it becomes and 13/100ths. And then the last thing, we're going to go from a percent to a fraction. So when I change a percent to a fraction, remember, our percent is going to become the numerator, and the denominator is always going to be 100. Why? Because percent means out of 100. And then our last step is just to simplify if we can. So if I have 67%, again, the percent is going to become my numerator. The denominator is always 100. And then I just need to see if I can simplify. 67 is a prime number, so I can't simplify anything there. So 67% is just 67/100ths. 425%, so let's put 425 as our numerator, 100 as the denominator. I can simplify here because this is an improper fraction. So 100 will go into 425 4 times. I'll have 25 pieces out of 100 left over. I can simplify it even further because they're both divisible by 25, and I get 4 1/4. And then 8%, 8 becomes the numerator, 100 is the denominator. They're both divisible by 4. So 8 divided by 4 would give me 2. 100 divided by 4 would give me 25, and that is as simple as it can get. So I get 2/25. So remember, most important thing, percent means out of 100.